This is a Section 9.2 Mathcast. It contains 3 lessons. In this lesson, students will perform chi-squared tests of independence and homogeneity. The trash ball scenario continues with our 3 hypothetical students now testing different types of paper to see if they are independent or have some association with the proportion of made or missed free throws. In problems 928 through 934, the students are prompted to complete this chi-squared test of independence. There is a math notes box for the chi-squared independence test in this section. In problem 928, students reproportion all of the counts in the frequency table to reflect the pooled proportion of 303 out of 400 for made baskets and 97 out of 400 for missed baskets to create the expected frequency table. This points back to the concept of a pooled proportion used to create expected frequencies in the chi-squared statistic, rather than the rote rule memorization of row total times column total over grand total. If you're accustomed to using the rote rule, you may want to briefly review the pooled proportion technique to complete the expected frequency table before your students do this problem. Lesson 921 brings together the concept of independence of multiple factors in two-way tables, as introduced in Chapter 1 and Chapter 3, and most recently in Lesson 832. The degrees of freedom for the test of independence are illustrated in problem 932. You might have your students refer back to problem 169, where the concept of values free to vary versus those constrained by shared totals was first demonstrated. Lesson 922 wraps up the trash ball scenario, with the 3 hypothetical students completing a single test of homogeneity for the information they collected and introduced in Lesson 831. Lesson 922 contains a math notes box for the chi-squared homogeneity test. One way to recognize a test of homogeneity is to realize that there are multiple samples involved, one from each population. If there were multiple sample sizes determined before the data was collected, there are likely multiple populations involved, so it is a test of homogeneity. In a test of independence, there's generally one sample taken, and then the frequencies are sorted into various categories. Lesson 923 is primarily a review of Chapter 9 concepts. Students will gain experience in recognizing each of the chi-squared tests in context and practice the details of carrying out each test. Encourage your students to first classify each type of problem, as the directions indicate, before solving any of these. At this point, it is acceptable if your students are doing the number crunching on their calculators. That is, not finding all expected counts and chi-squared contributions by hand. However, it is required that they show all expected frequencies and report that the smallest expected count is at least 5. Mr. Knowlson is back with another one of his infamous chemistry quizzes. Problem 948 requires the use of the binomial distribution to calculate the expected frequencies. You might have a few leading questions ready to prompt the teams into setting up the calculations. And don't forget that the problem generator is an excellent source of review problems for Chapter 9. Chapter 10 will begin the study of inference with quantitative data.